Okay, yeah, there's my assistant. Okay, so I'm just going to get started, and we may do this very quickly. Okay, so well, this is where you can get the book. You can go to my website, Success Engineering Works, resources and books, and then just scroll down. And this is the book that this session is based on, actually. And there are two important things. One is you can get to the book as a commentator with this button, and I will talk about the ChatGPT thread. That is my way, I think, of having ChatGPT, which the one I've got here has been trained in Amplio and how to interact with you. I'll get into that in a couple of minutes. That I believe that's one of the real advantages of these large language models is you can use them to do real-time training or querying, solving problems. So that's a lot of what this effort is about. But I thought I wanted to start with, well, not I thought I wanted, I do want to start with basically why I wrote this book in the first place, because I think that's actually pretty important. That should say Learning Kata. But anyway, why did I write this book? And I wanted to talk about this because I think this wasn't really due to a deep insight. It was due to people in my workshop clamoring for me to explain things a certain way. So the first reason, they kept saying, well, that's great, but how do I get other people to see this? So I was teaching a workshop I call Amplio Development, which basically starts out at the team level and then goes up to what I call BLAST, the Basic Lean Agile Solution Team. You can think of it as Scrum at scale, but on first principles, not based on Scrum. So I thought, well, that was a reasonable request. So I had actually seen how some thought leaders, in particular Fernando Flores, Werner Erhard's a little bit controversial, but he formed EST, and I'd been through a lot of his workshops. I had seen how interacting with people in a particular way could change their lives. It changed my life. I took the workshop in November of '83. I used to be a very introverted programmer. I'm not that now, but other bigger issues happened and changed for me. I saw it was possible. It kind of got me interested in learning how to do it. So when people started saying this, that's great, but how do I get other people to see it? I already knew how to do that. I'd been doing it for a long time. I had just not so much thought about writing a book. But then I also realized in all the work I'd done at Net Objectives for 20 plus years and a couple of years at the PMI, you really need to integrate what you're helping coach people and doing with the coaching. There's no such thing as, oh, I'm a great coach. You're a great coach in what? Okay. To say, oh, I'm a life coach or something, well, okay, that might be good. I can say you can be a life coach in helping people live a better life. But if you're doing knowledge work, then how do you be a great coach in knowledge work? Well, there's obviously a lot of overlap. But that's kind of what I saw, is that you need to understand flow and lean theory constraints so you can move people to a better solution. You need to have the distinctions to take them there, how people listen, learn, react so you can avoid resistance. The good interpersonal skills, well, that takes a long time. My experience, it took me, once I really I wanted to be a good coach and I realized I wasn't, it took me about 3 years. So I don't have a formula for that. But all these others, like how to ask questions, they're not hard to learn. It's really a matter of a few months, in my opinion. And how long it takes you, more important, how far away are you from where you want to be? In my case, I was pretty far away, is the real difference, but it's truly a commitment to it. And that was maybe the other thing. I was proof that people without coaching skills could become great coaches. Now, I was a good trainer by this time. I was actually a really good trainer. And I think I was always a good trainer, but I wasn't necessarily good one-on-one because of not that I couldn't interact well with people, but I felt one-on-one, I kind of had to make a difference with this person, and that put pressure on me. And I, to be candid, didn't know how to deal with the pressure and see the opportunities. So That was a challenge for me. You know, me on 3 or 4, 10 people, I was great. Me one-on-one, sometimes awesome, sometimes not so awesome. But I knew it could be done. So this was why I wrote the book. Okay, now this is the book. I'm going to go through 5 reasons, 5 things, and then we're going to get into the discussion mode. But I was actually talking to ChatGPT, which is part of this, and I said, what are really the salient things about this book that it thought was most important? And it came up with these 5, and they're good. I mean, I agree. I wouldn't put it up here. I don't just do what ChatGPT tells me. But this is really the big one. Most trainings, if they're taught the right things, they'll do the right things. Well, people don't work that way. People are very emotional. People do things when they understand them. Telling people here's information doesn't usually, or should say often, depends, of course, actually, lead to right action. So capability doesn't come from information. It comes from developing the ability to see distinctions and act on them. In other words, to see the problem better and act on them. The learning kata is designed to build capability, not just understanding. Now, I use the term learning kata because this method is not just coaching. In other words, I can use it to coach, you can use it to coach. But the idea can also be used for individuals to learn better by understanding what's the mechanism of learning. So at first I called this a coaching kata, but then I changed it to a learning kata because it works both ways. And it's about getting capability, not understanding. Now, this is a very important thing. If you can't, is that our perception is shaped by language. Now, you might pay attention to this while you're listening to me. Everything I say is kind of going through an automatic filter in your head. And you're listening more to that automatic filter than you're listening to what I said. Nothing wrong with you. That's called being a human being. I'm not saying this is good or bad. It's just the way it is. You know, if you've ever been in a meeting or it's going around the room and people are saying things, and you might find yourself listening to the conversation in your head about what you're going to say, and there's pressure. That's this thing. So this when we talk about things and see things, this is what we do. Now, if we don't have certain distinctions that somebody is talking about, then we will filter it and change it into what we do have. So this is a problem because when people talk, we don't quite hear what they say. We hear what we can already understand and we filter it. So the role of the coach is not really to get answers or give answers, rather it's to introduce distinctions so people can hear what you're trying to have them learn and understand. And this is a nice statement by Edgar Schein that I like. We do not think and talk about what we see. We see what we're able to think and talk about. There's an American phrase from Missouri, I'll see it when I believe it. When the reality is, I'll believe it when I see it. I mean, I'll see it when I believe it is more than I'll believe it when I see it. We don't see what we don't believe. We filter this out. This is very strong also in emotions. And trying to get people to understand what's going on in a business situation is very emotional. Why? Because their job depends on it. Their identity depends on it. So there's a lot that's important. Okay. Also, learning has to happen in stages. The reason you see Apollo pickup 6 there is one of the ways I learned how to teach was back in 96 when I first became my first true consulting job. And I realized I had no idea how to do it. I'd been a really great developer. I'd written a lot of stuff. By 96, I'd been in software for 26 years. But teaching other people how to do it seemed to be very difficult. Yeah, easy.
So I guess we're going to come back to the last sentence. Learning
But you're kind of in an echo. I can't, Ibiza, I can't quite understand you. I don't know what it is. Maybe move closer to the mic.
I was saying that the last sentence, learning application. I hope you're going to share more light on that because I have concerns.
I'm sorry, I still couldn't understand. Did somebody else get what he said?
Maybe put in chat.
Learning,
Oh, put it in chat. Yeah, I'm sorry. I just can't put it in the meeting chat. I don't know. Your microphone's kind of funny.
Yeah,
Muffled.
Anyway, while you're doing that, I'll say how I got why the pickup six thing is there. What I realized was that when I was trying to see how to teach something kind of complex, it was a C++ object orientation. I realized that I didn't quite know how to do it, but that I could teach them little bits, things they already almost knew in a sense. And that was like this idea of a pickup sticks, like this yellow stick. I could teach them that, but then that opens up the next stick. And then when I get that off, that opens up another stick and then another stick. So I can teach in little bits. And that was important. Oh, okay. I still haven't seen, whenever you are ready, I've got the chat up. It'd be easy, ask it in the chat and I'll go to that. So what we have to know to do is you cannot teach complex problems all at once. Yeah, learning applic. Yeah, I'll get there. I'll get there. I'm going to go through each one of these. Yeah, I thought you had said the last one. I'm going to get there. What I mean by that. So people can't absorb complex concepts all at once. It's just too much. And if you introduce too many distinctions at the same time, the learners lose agency. In other words, they think, oh, I'm overwhelmed. I can't go with this. So it's about moving forward, carefully sequenced distinctions. I call this the pickup six model of learning. And it was actually based on what I learned with Fernando Flores in the 80s. So this wasn't the new concept. I just kind of reframed it a little bit. Anyway, coaching is not about giving answers. And it's also not about stepping back and facilitating. Those are not your two options. You know, I remember like in Chicken Run, one of the great questions there was he said, well, we'll do this or we'll die trying. And somebody says, are those the only two options? So the only two options of facilitating or standing back, no, or giving answers, no, there's a middle ground. And it's not about giving advice, transferring best knowledge, or solving for others. Casey.
Hey, I think you said it best one time. It's been a while back, but you said stop helping, start coaching. And I think that's
Yeah,
really what Kata does for me. Is that's what stands out when I think of Kata. Stop helping, start coaching.
yeah, I like that. But the problem is you got to understand what a coach is, and what a coach is has been bastardized so much. It's hard. I kind of having been a sports person for my whole life and followed professional sports and college sports. I like the sports coach metaphor. And one person once said something really good about what a good sports coach is. A good sports coach will not tell, they were talking about in this case, the quarterback, but it would work for anybody. Quarterback in football is the guy who gets the ball typically from when they snap it and throws it or hands it off or something, might run it himself. They said a good quarterback coach, a good sports coach will not tell the quarterback what to do. Okay, yeah, that's not coaching, that's training and that's information transfer. But the coaching part is he will tell him things so when the quarterback is on the field, the quarterback makes better decisions. That's what a good coach does. They don't tell the quarterback what to do. There's no way. The quarterback out there, you got all these people trying to kill you, not literally, but pretty much. And yet a good coach will make it so they impact the performance of the person while they're playing. That's what a good coach does. Now, to do that is not to be following a checklist, but it doesn't mean you don't use checklists at one time to say what to look for. So the learning kata treats coaching as, help learners see what they currently can't see, because that's important. If you don't see it, you can't do anything with it. Surface hidden assumptions, because when you make assumptions, you're kind of helpless. And guide discovery of the next actionable distinction so you can expand. So all of these go together. The idea is to create agency. You have to have agency. That means whether you've been told it's your job, whether you got the authority saying, well, I'm going to do the best I can to get this done. I think that is the number one thing a good coach has, is a commitment to themselves that they are going to make a positive impact with the people they coach. Now, it doesn't show up maybe on their job description, but that's what you have to do. Because a lot of times people show up antagonistic. I remember one time I had somebody in my workshop, somebody else was actually teaching it because I wasn't certified at the time to teach the material. And we brought in a guest person to teach it who was certified. And this person, though, in the workshop was disruptive, arrogant, jerk. I mean, the worst case scenario, and the guest lecturer or trainer wanted to throw them out. Now, one thing I knew was that people sometimes act out because they're in an unfamiliar situation. So I figured, well, this guy may be just this way and there's nothing I can do. But instead of just throwing him out, like this trainer actually said he would have thrown him out, but it was my workshop. I thought, well, what's going on with him first? So I went and we had a little conversation, and what I realized was he was upset because we weren't meeting his expectations. But the reason we weren't meeting his expectations was we had a plan to do something better, but it required a different way. Anyway, in a couple of minutes, it literally was not more than a 3 or 4 or 5 minute conversation. He totally shifted because now he was seeing what we were doing was giving him a good opportunity. And it was really great. He was actually one of the most excited people in the class after that. I don't always work miracles like that because that really was kind of spectacular. But the point is, if I wasn't committed to his value, getting value out of the workshop, he would have been gone. And everybody would have excused me and said, yeah, good thing you got rid of that guy. So that's what I mean by agency. Okay. So it's, you want to get them to have the agency too. So when they're in a situation that maybe they don't have the mandate for, maybe it's not in the workshop they've been certified in, then how do they get better? This is really important. Okay, so now easy. What did I mean by this? Learning happens with application. You do not really learn much in workshops. This idea of half-day and full-day trainings is absolutely the antithesis of everything that they know. Everybody knows I've been studying curriculum for 40 plus years. This is the wrong way to do it. Now, let me clarify this. If you go into a company and you do something where you actually help them working, that's not a workshop to me. That's a working session. You know, like you can take a 2-day workshop, whatever you want to call it, and on how to do product development, and you actually help build a product. That's a good thing. But if you're trying to learn something, it accelerates when you combine something new or small real world application. I mean, go back to your workplace, reflect and adjust based on what happened. This mirrors the governing dynamics as effective product development. In other words, in product development, we don't just let's work for a few weeks and see what happens. No, we need tiny batches. And the time frame is much faster with learning, because if you do more than an hour, hour and a half, people just bounces off. Okay. Small increments, fast feedback to improve capability. Learning works best when it follows the same pattern as effective development. So this is why, this is another interesting thing. I don't have it as a bullet here. But Amplio learning journeys are actually organized based on this. In other words, the Amplio learning journey is a learning journey. It's a transfer of understanding and distinctions, but it's based on these 5 things. You have to learn how to do capability. You have to show things, get people to see things. Learning has to happen in stages. Coaching is about not giving solutions, but seeing what you need to look at to create your own solutions. And it happens and it works with application. And I just realized I'm going to start it late. I fortunately have Read AI going, but I'm going to start, at least from this point on, the recording here. But I got Read AI, so it should be fine. I don't trust Read AI, unfortunately. Okay, so questions on these 5 things, then I'm going to get into the book and the ChatGPT. Nope. Okay. So let me get out of here. Let me go here. Again, if, by the way, if you want to bookmark this, that's easy to do. Oh. Except I think it's got to be capitalized. It's just of course, like I said, you can find it just by scrolling down. Okay, so this book is mostly done. It needs a little smoothing out. It was a book that Paula Stewart and I started. I think we called it The Value Coach, and then I realized it had gotten off the rails, in my opinion. So I thinned it out. I had it also focus on Amplio. I guess I was a little uncertain about making an Amplio specific. It's not really Amplio specific. This is not about teaching Amplio, but I call it the Amplio Learning Kata because it's a learning kata I developed, and my system is Amplio, and it's based on the philosophy, the Amplio axioms of coming from first principles. So if you want to, you can go right here. You'll see it under Google Docs, and I'm going to come in here. And you will be in commentator mode. So you can make suggestions. You can actually make changes, but it'll be in kind of a suggest mode. So I can see it and I might take them out. This is a table of contents. I've shortened it considerably. It's about 180, 90 pages. Let me go through a couple of things and then we'll get into my idea of the Chat GPT. Okay. In another couple of weeks, maybe a little longer, I'll get this out on LeanPub. So let me go through here. A couple important things to look at. Okay. So there's a public Amplio GPT. I want to explain this because this has been, I guess I got a year about in this. And it's actually an interesting example of I don't know how I just noticed this footer got messed up. I just like this down here because then wherever I am in the book, I can like click it and jump up to the table of contents instead of scrolling. That's why that's down in the footer, if you wonder. So about a year ago, I don't really remember when, I could look back through my journals. I just saw your question about learning happens in stages part. Let me go back to that then. Okay. Here, let me explain this with the example that actually led to this. So I was a contractor at a large, you might guess who it is, large manufacturing company that built airplanes. And I had the responsibility to teach 300 people object-oriented programming in C++ and to use Windows when what they had been using is Fortran and using mainframes. These were the people who were developing software for the engineers of the planes that were being designed to help build them. So it was a very interesting problem. I was very well prepared for it. I was, at the time, I'd been a 10X programmer. I knew how to program well. And I had an engineering degree from MIT. I had a master's in math as well. I had master's from MIT as well. I was really very suited for this. And you know how when you get a new contract for 30 days, everything is good and happy. And I was good and happy. And then about a month in, as I'd gotten my feet wet and I really understood the magnitude of the problem, I thought to myself, Al, you have no idea how to do this. Really, I was very clear. I had no idea how to get 300 people trained in my year-long contract, rather. So one thing I've learned, in fact, this is not a bad coaching tip. One thing I learned is when you're in fear, because it was like, oh my God, I'm going to lose my job, going to get fired. I just moved out to Seattle with my family and a little boy, and I'm going to be unemployed. At the time, I was okay. I wasn't actually, back then, I wasn't really that great financially. So I had this fear come to me. One thing I've learned when you have fear, and this is true whether it's for you or not you have to overcome it. You don't think well in fear. It's just a human thing. Some people, maybe they can put it aside, but I'm not James Bond. Sometimes I pretend I am and see if I get my coffee latte maker started before I put the cup under. Can I get the cup under before the coffee comes out? But that's about as adventurous as I go, typically. So I realized what I needed to do is get out of the fear. So I looked at it and I said, well, what if you do lose your job? This was 96. Jobs are plentiful. I was skilled. I figured, yeah, so what? I'll get another job. Oh, I didn't want to do that, but I now was not in terror. Okay, then I thought about it. Well, I don't know what to do, but what's the difference between me and them? Well, my wife's loving, and if I asked her, she'd have said I'm cute, but I don't think that's going to get the job done, and not everybody has that opinion, so that wasn't the answer.
Yeah.
And then I started thinking about it, being a little bit arrogant, like I tend to be. I thought, well, I'm smarter than them. But then I thought about it. I said, no, you're not. You just solve the problems differently. You look different. And I knew a guy already I was trying to train. He was just as smarter than me. So it wasn't intelligence. And I realized I looked at things differently. I saw things he didn't see. And he saw things and paid attention to them, that things I didn't pay attention to. See, this is this one. I'm looking in some useful places and he's not looking, or he's looking here, but he's not looking out here. So I knew this had to happen in stages. I couldn't teach him the whole thing. See, what I wanted to teach him was this thing called object orientation. That was like this green stick. I couldn't teach that green stick. They needed to know all this other stuff. So I realized my problem is I'm trying to teach this, and that's an impossible problem. You can't teach this when you need all these other things to understand it. So this idea of a pickup sticks model just shot in my head. And I said, oh, look at this, because one of my friends had said something like, you can only teach things that people already almost know. See, I just had to mention this. I just had to mention, and this one was kind of like, what happens if you have a lot of different cases, or you duplicate? Everybody knows why duplication is bad. Well, you mentioned that. But now there's something else that's available. Well, what if I teach that? And then, now I can teach this one, and then I could teach that one, and then I could teach this one. So this happens in stages, means people will get overwhelmed if you try to teach too much. But if you teach one little thing, it opens the door for another little thing, which opens the door for another little thing, which opens the door for yet another little thing. And that was my point. And notice this does a few things. It makes your job easier, and you have some homework to do. Bummer, except that's not really bad, because when you pay attention to that, that's the heart of this. I am getting to this. See, that's what these little steps are. Now, these come from the Toyota Kata by Mike Rother, and his stuff's totally brilliant. There's not a word in that book that I'm aware of anyway that I disagree with. But I'm not really built from him. I use Flores and Earhart and another half dozen educators that I've studied in the 80s and have studied since. I mean, there's all sorts of things, Kahneman, lots of people. But I'm very consistent with it, and because I'd like a reference to it, that's why I have the book. But these were the steps. These were pick up stick, pick up stick, pick up stick, pick up stick, pick up stick. And that's what I did. Okay. Good. I saw your thumbs up. So I'm going to now go back on. Okay. So here's the interesting thing with the ChatGPT. And this is something nobody seems to be talking about publicly. But when I talk to people who I know AI well, they all say the same thing, basically. Large language models are kind of, I mean, they're really powerful. They're really amazing, but they're mostly an amalgam of what's out there. And they don't really know how to tell what is good out there and what isn't good out there. Because you've read a lot of stories probably about how things happen wrong. So I notice this. If I go in and it doesn't know who I am, it'll tell me stuff that I think is absolutely absurd. But people hold it close to their vests or chests, so it's out there. So about a year ago, an offhand comment by one of my sons, who is also technical. He's just more well balanced than me. Maybe I'm a little more technical, but he's better balanced. It's really nice. Really proud of him. And he made some offhand comment as we were talking about using LLMs, and I realized that I wasn't pushing them. In other words, I was getting help, but I wasn't pushing it to get more help. Or what did I miss? So that little comment, oh, you should add, what did you miss? And then I started engaging with it. And then what I found out is I wanted to tell it that, well, I don't want you to be nice to me, because I'd heard these things are always nice to you. I said, look, I don't want you to be nice to me. I want you to be like a peer, scientific peer. So at first it thought I wanted it to be like a devil's advocate. I said, no, I don't want you to be a devil's advocate either. I want you to be like, we're studying and trying to solve a problem. And that started something, because then I realized you need an agreement with these things, and you need to tell it what you believe and what you don't believe, and that you want it to disagree with you when it has evidence that you're wrong. So over time, I've trained this. I also came up with how I should be talking to people. You all may or may not have noticed, but my tone has gotten a lot different in the last few months. And I will thank a lot of the ACEs for telling me I needed to change it. But a lot of it is because I would run things by ChatGPT, and it would take out anything that could be attributed to a personal attack, and rather what the real issue is. So ChatGPT is really good with this. I'm not saying that's the right one to use. That's just the one I've used. I'm probably going to try a couple others. But over time, I learned that I could get it to help me a lot. So what I did is I created a special ChatGPT that is trained in this book. So it has seen the book, it knows my background. And the question is, how can you use this book yourself? So I've got it here at the start, but as people use it, this will get buried. So what I also did is, if you come down here, just go to there, ask the question, engage in Amplio's Learning Kata mode, and then it'll talk to you. Okay, now this is still anonymous, even though it's public, because it doesn't know who you are. But and you don't need to say this. You don't need to say this if you're in this mode, because if you're in this one, but if you go to your own ChatGPT, this will only work with ChatGPT. If you're in your own, you can say this. And then what it does is it draws from the Amplio axioms what it's based on. It'll look to see what's missing. This will help you decide how to coach. It assumes people don't inherently resist change. There's a chapter on that as well, by the way. It won't provide you tips. That's not what it's about. This is about getting to be a better coach. So you can ask it all sorts of questions. And I always am challenging my own axioms, but a pretty stable foundation. And this is to help you. Also, what's important is there is a system of governance. I'm not taking just what anybody says, but if you make a suggestion, ChatGPT will tell me, and then we'll see if we want to put it in. Okay, so that's it. It's a longer introduction than I meant, but I also answered a couple of questions. What I'd love for y'all to do is to start using this thing. Then this is about me and a preface and all that, and then I get into the book. What you can always do, of course, is go up to the table of contents. Oh, I left one thing out, sorry. This is important. Where did I put it? Okay, I don't know why I put it further down, but I did. Yeah, I figured you'd read the preface. Now, when I first, yeah, I should probably move this up. I'm gonna, sorry, I know I'm making you dizzy. I'm making me dizzy. Here we go. Okay. Let me put this right up here. It's more obvious, and it's important. So one of the things that I had originally done, and I'm not going to go through this book, but one of the things I had originally done was I had a large, well, I mean, not too large, 40, 50 pages on the physics of flow in this book, because it's important. Remember this slide. It's important for people to know the distinctions and the domain you're working in. So I had some physics of flow in the back of this book, and I've decided to pull it out. Now, by the way, we did this last week, so this is the same one. You can see a session about it. You can go to it has its own public ChatGPT, and you can go to this book. This book's almost done. Got about a dozen things, but they're not long. Each is about an hour. And what was 40 to 60 pages, I've expanded to it's about 80 pages, 90 pages. This will be about maybe 100 one time. But you don't need to read this all. this is something to read. It's a companion book. You can read this when I start talking about stuff that you want to learn more. Okay. And again, I cross link it to here. Okay. Okay. So questions, comments. What have I left out? What don't you like? Oh, you could be skeptical. Is this going to work? What's going to happen? So I'm going to be quiet for a couple of minutes to let you think about things. Casey.
Hey, just thinking out loud, I think I brought this up before and it might make sense here, but if we could integrate AI coaching personas in different functional areas or in different areas of the value stream so that people could practice with them, I wonder if that would help or if that just sounds like too much talking to a
No.
machine.
Let me make sure I understand what you're saying, but I think I got it. In fact, this is an interesting twist on something I should have mentioned. So are you suggesting that we could tell ChatGPT to act as if I'm the coach and I'm interacting with you and I want you to evaluate how I'm coaching? Is that what you meant?
It could be that way. It could also be for self-coaching so that you can apply these
Okay.
things in the workplace so that you firmly understand them by taking
Okay.
on a persona. So let's say you want to learn, I don't know, iterative actional increments or value-driven objectives. You could have a coach that specializes in that helps you to really reinforce that so you understand it.
What do you mean have a well, that's why would I have a persona of that? That seems like that would just be ChatGPT coaching me.
Yeah. Well, I think that would cause the LLM to focus more precisely in that particular area. So the
Okay,
idea
so
of iterative improvement in that area to then build off of to have broader application.
okay. Let me restate what I think you're saying. I tell it what my persona is and ask to be coached in that persona.
Not quite. So I
Okay.
would say
Sorry.
I would tell the
Susan, I
LLM
think Susan
directly.
wants to explain it. I saw her hand go
Yeah,
up.
please.
This may be off in left field, but one thing that occurs to me is I need to explain to an executive why interruptions are bad.
Yeah, that would be a good way to do it too.
Coach me in how to explain to an executive.
Is that what you meant, Casey?
I'm not technical and I need to
I
explain
love
to
it.
a technical person.
Yeah. So that's not quite the idea I had. It's a
Okay,
better
we're getting
version
closer.
of it. It's more precise. The version I had was more you're a value stream coach, you're a requirements coach, you're a jobs to be done coach. So you're a QVR coach. So you specialize in these particular facets of Amplio. But I think the way Susan frames it by function and like actual problem is probably a better selling point and more practical. So forget what I said and listen to her
No,
as usual.
I think we have three things here. I think one thing is I'm this type of coach and I need to convey something to that type of person. So it's a double persona question. I think that's brilliant because that's really what it is, isn't it? In coaching, you're who you are, and you're talking to other people who they are.
Yeah, it just dawned on me too that would enable if you had the coach take on your role.
That's what I
That
mean.
would open up a discussion for they call it administrative conjunction. It's when people in like positions talk to each other about so regulators, judges, legislators, they go and meet around the world with other people in those roles and talk about wicked problems that they can't address with traditional legislation or regulatory approaches.
You know what's so nice about this is because they could be the coach in your role and you could play act the persona that you're going to be coaching. Like, oh, I think they're going to say this, or I can think they're going to say that. That's brilliant. Yeah, that's a nice way. This is really nice. This would be a really good use of it. And I just want to underscore something. See, this is why community learning is so great. I didn't get that idea. I wouldn't have gotten that idea. And if Casey and I were talking by ourselves without Susan here, maybe we would have, maybe we would have, maybe we wouldn't have. This is why this idea of learning sometimes by yourself is kind of silly. And it's collaborative learning, mob learning, I guess.
Yeah, and
So
sorry for jumping. Just to add, I
yeah,
think the other aspect where you mentioned adding some real life application, because the question now will be sometimes you don't have an exact real life application to use as a coaching tip. then the AI can come in that kind of situation.
Yeah. See, now the problem is, actually, it can go even better than this. There are actually three. Here's my role. Here's who I'm talking to. Here's the context we're in.
Yes.
Because if it's a safe shop, I might talk to them a different way than if it's a scrum shop. But here's what's interesting, and this is why this is also good, and it's taken me a while with ChatGPT. It's very familiar with Scrum and SAFe and all these methods, and it's familiar with why the Amplio approach. Now, if you don't agree with the Amplio approach, ChatGPT may not be the best one for you, but the thing is, it will know how to talk to them in a way that doesn't make them defensive, and will give you the distinctions in a way that lets them see the opportunities. So yeah, I love these three distinctions. Who am I? What's my role? Who are they? The role of who I'm talking to, and the context we're in. I'm just reading the chat that came here. I love that adversarial persona assignment, because that is where it gets tough. Yeah. See, this is what's interesting to me about AI. And it should have been, and I haven't done this. I did a little bit of it. See what you can ask. But this way is another way to go further. And I'll add this. I'll talk to ChatGPT about it could make suggestions like this. So this thing gets smarter and smarter as you do as well. And I think this is one of the reasons that I'm excited about this approach, because as more people use it, it'll get smarter in how it can be used and in the advice it can give. This is one of the things I've actually seen as we go forward. And it makes it so it takes a lot less time than it used to. And I think this is another way of breaking the iron triangle. I'm still kind of, people just have accepted that. And then they say, oh yeah, well, we don't quite believe it. But then you look at whole bunches of conversations, and that conversation is based on the iron triangle, fixed scope, that scope, budget, and time are fixed, instead of looking to see how you can change that. Yeah, Susan.
It's a really convenient excuse.
It is a really convenient excuse. I was just watching somebody talk about how great the PMP, helping people with the PMP training and how it's all this good. And I'm like thinking to myself, yeah, but the whole model of sticking to time, budget, and scope is the wrong model to begin with. What you want to do is get your objective done with the quality you want in the time frame, budget, and scope you have, but those are constraints. Okay, great. But that's not where your focus should be. And this was disproved half a decade ago. That's what always amazes me. The Toyota, 60 years ago, the Toyota disproved this in the late 60s. And yet we're still holding on to it. Anyway, other questions? Dale, I saw you put, oh no, that was Casey, put up a Medium article. I get a little,
Yeah,
oh, yeah.
that's a good one right there.
Yeah, it's this is encouraging though, because I think one of the things then I can start doing, I think this enables us to give more guidance to people. And one of the things that really is powerful with ChatGPT is its way to ask questions anonymously. And in a lot of places, people are always talking about being in an unsafe environment. And I know that's important. But what's really more unsafe than the environment you're in is your internal conversation a lot of the time. People are trapped in their own thinking and fear of their own thinking. A lot of people are afraid to discover something new, because doing that does two things. One is it kind of takes away for a lot of people their self-worth, because, oh, I'm supposed to know this, I didn't. Oh, it cuts you down a little notch. The other one, it introduces fear, like I had. Oh, I don't know how to do this, I'm going to lose my job. Nobody told me I was going to lose my job if I didn't know how to do this. I'd been in that situation before. I got out of it fast there only because I'd been in sheer terror years before. I remember once at a very important consulting gig I had where I'd built their whole software system, and they liked me and my ideas so much that it was a small company, just like, I don't know, $20 million or something. They liked my ideas and me a lot, so they put me on their board of directors. And I remember we were now talking about this back in the 80s, so computer technology wasn't as advanced. And we were talking about how we had to transform this company and how it handled its incoming product and retail product. And I was like, oh, this is great. And then they all looked to me and said, well, Al, you're basically our IT department. And I'm like saying to myself, oh, crap. That's a Blaine word for what I really said. And to myself. And I realized I didn't know how to do it. And now here I am knowing I don't know how to do this, knowing this is my livelihood at this moment. They were like 60, 70, 80% of my revenue, and I was really bad financial shape at that time. And I was in stark terror. And, you know, one thing I learned as a consultant, you can be in stark terror, but not for long. It gets obvious after a while. So I got the nerve to say, well, I don't know how to do this. I'll need help. That was very terrifying for me. This was one of my first consulting gigs like this. And they just immediately said, oh, yeah, well, of course we'll help you. And as you get through these terrors, maybe you won't have them. I had them. What can I say? They get easier. Every time is easy. The next time it's easier. The next time it's easier. The thing to know, it's natural as well. There's nothing wrong with you.
Well, it's a good thing it was a $20 million company and not a $200 million company.
I'm sorry, what was that?
A different response.
I'm sorry, say that again. I didn't have the volume up enough.
I said it's a good thing it was a $20 million company and not a $200 million company.
Yeah, well, see, now I can go anywhere. Yeah. You know, I have a client now that's a multi-billion-dollar, manufacturing place. And I remember while I'm going through and seeing things, I'm saying to my, I have the whole, what's that complex when you don't think you're good enough?
Imposter syndrome.
Yeah, I'm going through this thing with the imposter syndrome, and it's like, oh my God, look at all this thing is. These guys are so smart. How am I going to help them? I had that covered. These guys were smart. How am I going to help them? And this whole thing's going on with me, and I just keep breathing and meditating. Say, Al, you're a pretty smart guy. You know this stuff. You're different than what they think you are. That turned out to be an advantage for me. I didn't realize that until after it was all done, and I wrote up my report, and I saw, oh, well, the fact that I didn't know some things about this type of factory was actually useful because I wasn't locked into a certain way of thinking factories like this have to be. But while the whole thing was going on, I'm like, have this terror, and I just have to keep breathing. I use meditation myself. So it's not like I ever got free of it, but now the fear cycle was about a minute. Then I come back in 20 minutes, so another minute or 30 seconds, and just breathe through it. This is called being a human being. Now, some people never have this problem. I'm not one of those. But as a coach, there are two important things to recognize. One is you have it. More important is they have it, but they won't let you know. One interesting thing when I did the yes training I liked, he talked about, think about teenagers. Teenagers don't have their act together, and they're kind of funny when you see how they interact with each other because it's obvious they don't have their act together. The difference between an adult and a teenager is adults don't have their act together, but they hide that better than teenagers hide it. And so we get away with pretending we have our acts. Well, that's not just you. That's everybody you're coaching. Now, I did write an article about imposter syndrome. I just realized I sure hope it's in the book because I wrote this after I wrote the outline. This is very important. I think I put it in here. Yeah. Yeah. This is something that's actually interesting. that a friend of mine who's like a really, really good coach, he was at a client and he was saying, Al, they want me to do this and I don't know how to do this. And I'm like, he was in deep imposter syndrome. And I know this guy. And I said, look, you are one of the best coaches I know. I got you feel this way, and I got you don't know what to do. That doesn't make you an imposter. It just means you're a smart person in a situation where you don't know what to do. But notice, you know you don't know what to do, and you know what you need to learn to know what to do, and that's why you're not an imposter. That's the lesson. That's what you have to talk to them about and say, you need to be given this information. And that's what he did. Oh, I got it. See, that's where this is also like Ryan Holiday's The Obstacle is the Way. Now, it's another thing. I don't know if I should have put this in here. Yeah, how about that? I thought it would be in here. This is a great book. This is the agency idea. Like this guy who was being a jerk in my workshop, instead of saying he was an obstacle, his behavior was an obstacle, I needed to talk to him based on where he was. So coaching is a two-way street. You're helping them, they're helping you see what you need to do, and both of you need to have agency, and you have more than they do. So you have to look at what we call now the agency flywheel. How can you get them to have more and more agency? Okay, I'm going to pause again. Oh, somebody just wrote something. Now, when you say this book, Dale, you mean the coaching book?
Yeah,
Yeah, well, let's see. One of the things that's interesting. See, in a sense, this is also a metric, how far you're going up from where you are to the target. What are the steps? Now, it's also not always the same. There are not a lot of specific metrics. It's true. What you're really doing, and the reason there aren't specific metrics, is because the result is not on what they've learned. The result is how does it show up? And I'll be candid here. I've not really thought about the metrics, but I probably should, okay? But it'll be metrics in a different way. Now, there is something I have. Here, let me see if I can show this. There is a metric I don't have. Oh, I may not have this. I may not have this in the book at all, and that would be a mistake. Hang on. This would be, because there is something I know about this that should be in there, but I may not have put it in there. Because this is actually very important. So I'm really glad you mentioned this, Dale, because you're absolutely right. I need to do more. I could do more. I've been more focused on what I thought made the biggest difference. Also, sometimes metrics aren't that useful because you know whether they're moving in the right direction, and that's what you're really trying to get them to do. How far, it's hard to say. I mean, and how far they need to go is hard to say. Just a second, I'm looking for a particular slide. Oh, crap. Well, I'll look in my main graphics file if I don't see it in a second. This is aggravating. I need to label these things so I can get to the, oh, here it is. Okay. So this is a variant. This is a variant of different competency models, okay, that I have here. I'll say I've got some other, I don't know what the content is here. Okay. So there's like Dreyfus has a model. Fernando Flores, that I learned this idea from, has his own model. This is a variant of the combination of the two. To me, this is, people talk about what you don't know, you don't know. You've heard this. Here's what you know. You know you don't know this. You don't know you don't know this. But what people ignore is that there's also stuff you know, but you don't know you know it. You ever have somebody says something and, oh yeah, I see it. You already knew it, but it was tacit knowledge. So that's in the background here. So to me, what you're trying to do is go from unaware to aware. At least I know I have the problem. This is quite useful. When I learned patterns, design patterns, I remember I was really struggling with the book, the Gang of Four's, design patterns, elements of reusable object-oriented software by the Gang of Four. And normally I'm a quick read. I mean, I can devour a technical book in a week. Here I was like 3 months in, and oh my God, my head hurt. I didn't quite understand it. And I finally did understand it. That's why I wrote my book, Design Patterns Explained. The reason they didn't explain it is they were writing to an audience that knew small talk and they understood object orientation. That book makes a lot of sense, but it doesn't make sense if you don't know OO. And I learned object orientation from Grady Bush. It's great man, done a lot of good stuff, but his OOD, object oriented analysis and design book, set me back 3 years at least in how to learn what OO was. At the time I was told, oh, it's objects are like methods, are like data with methods. That's horrible. Do not think about it that way. Anyway, so I lost my train of thought here. Oh yeah. So what I did in reading this book is I was struggling and struggling, and finally I got one pattern I really understood. I understood why it worked and all this. And I was then in a situation, I can still remember this. So I was at the gym with one of my adult sons, and my workout's a lot shorter than my adult son's. So I said, now take your time. I'll just read the book in the lobby. And I'm reading this book, and I realize I didn't need to read and learn all 23 or however many there were patterns. I just needed to know when I would use one. And then I could study when to use it. So in the next 30 minutes to an hour, I went through the other 22 patterns I didn't know, just read the first page. Oh, okay, when I have this problem, I'll study it. See, that was becoming aware. I now knew of something like a visitor, but I didn't know what the visitor, I knew the problem the visitor solved, but I didn't know what the visitor was. That's okay. I'll figure that out. By the way, that's a good way to read most books that are like this. So a beginner knows something. An advanced beginner can work sort of with less supervision. Here you need supervision. Here you need less supervision. Here you're pretty good. You don't need supervision. Here you can actually solve problems in most domains. And the expert is somebody who can make up stuff as they go because they understand it. The point is, the biggest gain is not getting to here. The biggest gain is going from here to here. So I haven't forgotten the metric question, Dale. I do go on rambles, but this isn't one of those. What I look at, and I should quantify this, and I haven't. Somewhere I might have talked about it a little better than this. Let me see if I talk about competency models. I should, and I should quantify them. Yeah. No, that's reframing is competency, not. Boy, what a great question. Degrees of competency. And I have that there. But what I should do, and I hate you already, I talk about why. But what I should do, and I don't, is this would at least be the first level of the metrics. Where are people? And here's the other way to do this. There was something I meant to mention, Casey, when you were making your suggestions. And this is another reason I've gone this route with these discussion boards, with the books. So I don't know, 6 months, 9 months ago with ChatGPT, and I know how to do it, but I haven't gotten around to it. I actually made a post about certification. The way it's done is mostly informational and isn't always that great. Well, see, to me, I'm not a disbeliever in certification. I just think it needs to be meaningful. I took a Red Cross. One time I was a certified Red Cross lifeguard. Okay. And now I may not have the strength for it, but at the time, the way you pass the test is you were thrown into a pool by where one of the instructors, his mandate was to try to push you under the water so they could stand up, basically drown you so they could survive. That was their mandate. And your mandate was how to save him where he couldn't do that. Okay. And believe me, these people are a lot stronger and bigger than me. Okay. And I got my certification because I demonstrated that by having somebody play a drowning guy trying to drown me, and I got him to the side of the pool. Okay, we did this in a big Olympic pool. And in an Olympic pool, they're deep. You can't stand on the bottom. There's no bottom. And you learn some things, but in the moment of panic, you have to do something. Now, maybe it's not as panicky because I knew they wouldn't really let me drown. But let me tell you, when somebody's bigger than you pushing you down in the water, it gets a little exciting. And you have to remember, what you do is you swim down. They will let go of you if they think you're drowning them. But anyway, the thing was that if you can get people to move forward step by step and quantify it, I talked to ChatGPT about this. Is there a way, given that these are personalized to me, that it could ask questions and do an essay style certification exam? And I spent a few hours with this, and I know how to do it, and I just haven't done it. So one of the things, and I'm really glad this has been brought up. Wow. Now I got another reason to do it because it'll fill this in. Anyway, this is what we came up with. ChatGPT and we came up with. We came up with a variety of questions that were going to be answered, not multiple choice, but answered in an essay style. See, the reason certifications don't use essays is it's too hard to grade them, but ChatGPTs can grade them really quickly. So two things here. First, what the certification will be, and I think I'm getting ready to do this now, is have a series of questions. This would be for different pieces in Amplio. Have it be different pieces of understanding. What's really cool when we tested this is like I gave it some questions like based on the Advanced Scrum Master course. And then I did some on Amplio. And what's cool is in the essay, it tells you what's missing. It tells you what you didn't get. It tells you what you got a little bit. And it tells you where to go for more. So it's very good. But let's take your question, Dale. Quantify it. Quantify where people are. So it's not so much telling you as a coach how well you're doing, because you're doing only as well as they're doing, in my opinion. Now, that may seem harsh, but in that situation, that's as well as you're doing. So tying a certification program into helping the coach see what to do could be quite useful. And now it makes more sense for me to do it, not just to get the certification, which I think is important because that can drop the certification cost to nothing, more or less. But it can also help the coach see where they are. Yeah, Dale.
Yeah, when in thinking about this, I was thinking you need to kind of turn this inside out. And I know in situations where I've been coaching teams, and I said this in the chat, the context for how you measure effectiveness is vitally important. And I know in cases where I was coaching teams and they had specific things that they needed to do, complete requirements document, design, or whatever it was, a presentation on a project approach, the effectiveness that I had as the coach was in how good their output was and how well received it was by the audience that was getting the output. And I looked at it that way from my perspective.
You have good thoughts here, but let me shift it a little bit. So I agree that it kind of depends on the context of the assignment, but I would say there's a way to do this that not quite context free. I would say there's a multidimensional grading. Like, what is the environment you're in from a safety point? What is the perceived safety of the environment you're in? What is the sense of agency people have? What is an understanding of what's going on? How do they feel they can get things on? I mean, there are a variety of dimensions. So here's the question, you, Dale, because I'm not saying this is a better answer, but you prompted this, so it's probably somewhere in between the two of us. If we look at, if we ask ourselves, what are the degrees of coaching success, I would suggest that we could look at, say, 4 or 5 different dimensions and then get a measure of that. And then the context we're in will affect those. That's what I'm saying. So in other words, I think I could probably find these 4 or 5 things that each individually will be dependent upon the context you're in, but as a whole, you can see kind of where you are. And other people could chime in on this because this is an interesting idea, because there's another piece to this. I've always thought about this as a way to see where they are, but this could be an indication of where you as the coach, what you need to attend to.
Mhm.
See, if you are coaching several people, it could be that you could make it where you get some of the results anonymously. In other words, say I got 5 people on my team and I talk to them. I set it up so ChatGPT will give me their results, but not name who it is. So I can get a kind of a understanding of where my team is. Oh, my team, they get this, but they're in fear or whatever. That could be useful as a tool to the coach. Yeah, this is really endless. You look like you're pondering this, Dale. Is it fit for you or
No, I think you're definitely onto something there, and I think that if you can identify the dimensions that you want to measure your effectiveness in, and then take those and apply the context of the coaching assignment into those dimensions, I think that would be a very valuable tool.
Well, why don't we do that right now? So
I kind of think we've already done that a little bit, Al, when we were talking earlier about domains, tasks,
do you think we have?
enablers.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got that. We just need to articulate what those domains, tasks, and enablers look like at each level, I think.
Yeah, okay. But this is, I agree. We've done it to some extent. But now we're doing it not from what we need as a coach, but what the person we're coaching or the team we're coaching. I like this idea that you can consolidate it. So understanding of the domain, presence of fear, which I did not have on this, sense of agency. These two are related, but they're not the same thing. Typically, if there's a lot of fear, you won't have much agency. And
What about
yeah.
Engagement and trust?
Oh, good. Now the question is, now this is interesting. Read AI is pretty good at that one. I don't know if ChatGPT is or isn't, but I'll bet it is.
Even thing like collaboration, which can be part of engagement, really.
Now, so when I was thinking of engagement, it's like between me and the coachee. But are you talking about collaboration between me and them or collaboration as a team?
As a team.
Yeah, I think that's a different thing, but I really like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, the beauty of it is ChatGPT, even though this would overwhelm me, it would have no problem doing all of these simultaneously.
That too.
This is one of the things that I came up with at this factory engagement is there are a whole bunch of experts there. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm certainly not going to see something they don't see. They're a lot smarter than me in this building than I am. So what can I do? And fortunately, I have an experience with AI. I have an experience with finding patterns and things. And this is something also that it's maybe there's a little sidetrack, but I think it's interesting. Is one of the things we're looking at doing is getting this vast amount of data they have, which is way too much for any mere human being to discern what's going on. But an AI tool could go through and find patterns almost no time at all. And I wonder if there's something. So let me switch. In these interactions we've been talking about, my question would be, are there things we think that ChatGPT could do that we can't? Now, we should ask ChatGPT that. I meant to ask it, just to say, yeah, this is going to give, if you want to read this, of course, you've got the link. It's in the book. Okay, so it expands this, which is good. Okay, now, what did I leave out? It often tells me, but it doesn't always tell me. Oh, this is what's also nice. When it says something like this, see, our knowledge is based on different levels. At some point, there's core understanding, principles, things like that, that then things build on top of. So when it says sits closer to the core mechanism, that's more important stuff. You know, that's like gravity. Well, it works different in space, different on a ship, different on a bridge, but gravity does exist in space, by the way. There's no such thing. There's no gravity in space. What you have is the gravity offset by centrifugal force. Whoa, see, duh. Isn't that important? Do they know where they're headed? Yeah. See, this is what I like to do. We just now have expanded it and it can tell me this stuff. This is what's so beautiful about this. See, it helps us.
This is really good.
See, what's interesting here is it just told us stuff we already almost knew, didn't it? My point to that is that this is an example of tacit knowledge. And notice how fast it is for us to understand this. Instead of try this and then you'll understand it. No, just deep into our own experience. Yeah, this is really good. How fast are they learning? I would suggest this is the thing, the automatic interpretive reframing about how they reinterpret it. I would ask one more thing. Wow, this is really good. Yeah, I would agree with that too. Crap, I had something cross my head and I forgot. A second. Oh. Yeah, see, this is a good thing because I don't think as clearly as it does. So, you know, there's a state and a capability. So separating those two will be, you know, this is interesting. See, now this just has given me another idea. So I'm not going to look at what it said just yet. But so I had, I had this little bit here, you know, what it means to engage and all that. But so we have a whole section now based on what this just told me. Oh my God, I'm never going to get this book finished. Just kidding. I don't need to get this book finished. Yeah, see, this is true. Resistance is not a primary cause. It's something else.
Mhm. That might be a symptom of the cause or how the cause manifests itself.
Yeah, that's right. Wow, this is so good. Okay, so let me ask you something. Here's the problem. And I faced this one before and I've not figured this one out. I mean, I faced this a lot of times and I've never figured this out, but I think I might now. So see, some of this part of this chat, we've got 2 or 3 responses that I think we should store someplace. And it's easy enough to do that in a copy and paste. Or maybe I have ChatGPT organize it in this thread. I think I could do that. Oh, let's see. Let's see. So this is how I learned to do things, by the way. I'm demonstrating it. Okay. No, I don't know what it's going to say, but it seems reasonable. Yeah. See, this is usually what it tells me. Perfect. This is fine. I'll tell you why this is fine. In fact, this might even be better. The reason this might be better is then it'll pull from the latest knowledge, not just what it said before. So I think that's right. I'm not going to go through this yet, but I'll figure out how to do this. Yeah, see, this is perfect. This is what I was thinking. It's wonderful. Wow. Well, that took me 5 minutes to solve a problem I've been working on for, I don't know how many years I've been working on this. Oh, I love it. And then when people do something, see, I can even ask it if somebody's given a response that it thinks I should know about it. It can probably find that too. Okay, we got 10 more minutes. Oh, Tony, I just noticed you had your hand up.
Could you scroll up just a few lines? I want to see the actual beginning of this answer.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, but
Yeah, down a little. Yeah. Okay. Yes, and yeah, because your material is evolving theory, not static reference information. That is significant. Okay. Thank you.
yeah, that's why this is better. That's what occurred to me, that this is better. You know,
Yes.
this is the thing that I just still, well, I shouldn't say I don't understand because I do understand, but it maybe is the biggest impediment. So I'm just going to step back for a minute because this is something in coaching. So if you look at the world we're in, most everybody holds on to a particular frame of way of doing things. Not y'all here. That's why you're here. You're learning it, and that's a good thing. But I can remember, oh, this was a long time ago. I don't know, it was like 2010, something like that. So I'd been in, patterns, XP, Scrum, and I remember walking to in a conference. I used to always spend more time with the other presenters, and I can remember Chad Hendrickson, Ron Jeffries, two or three other people like at that ilk. And I'm walking down the hall, and I see them, and I kind of wave to them, and one of them says, I think Ron said, and in a demeaning way, actually, I didn't take it as a demeaning. I actually took it as a compliment. But the tone was that. He said, oh, we were just talking about what you believe now. Like what the latest thing you'd gotten into. Yeah, and he said it in a kind of a meaningful meaning, as like I'm always changing my mind. And I was like, yeah, that's called learning. In fact, Dave Snowden once called me a serial adopter. He said, Al Shallow is a serial adopter. And I'm like, oh yeah, well, accuse me of when I see a better way to do something, I'll change, So the problem, and I actually, for a long time, I kind of felt this was a problem with Amplio because it was always changing. And it's always changing because I'm seeing better ways to do things. And that's kind of how I got into this idea of the books this way, is to see this. So the question is, why do I and you and some other people do it, but most people don't? And part of it is because you have to have, first of all, a lot of agency and a certain amount of courage to realize that what you are wrong about is not a weakness. When you notice it, it's a strength. But it doesn't feel like a strength because we've been trained. This is the automatic interpretive reframing. We've been trained in not doing that. I know I have something like that in the book. But this is Susan, you've mentioned this any number of times, the sense of fear, the agency flywheel, this is that same thing. But it's not just the people we're coaching, it's the coaches themselves. What makes us an expert is, I'm going to say this a different way. What increases our expertise is not how much knowledge we have, but how much we can accept that what we know is wrong and learn something better. That is a bigger driving force. I thought I saw a hand go up, but then I don't see it anymore.
It was just a passing thought, just a funny, weird passing thought. The biologist Lewis Thomas, in one of his books, Lives of a Cell, I think, once had a peculiar notion, and that was that ideas, he proposed this, and I don't know if it's original to him, I think it was. He suggested that maybe ideas are the thing that evolve, and they happen to be caught in our brains, but it's not us people who are constantly getting better and changing things. It's these ideas that are in our brains. Those are the things doing the growing and the modifications and so forth, the evolving. I was reminded of it in this.
Yeah, no, it'd be interesting.
Just a weird idea.
See, here's the problem I have with this book. Not the problem, but a kind of a self-imposed limitation on this book. And maybe I need to go beyond it a little bit. See, the Learning Kata is about how to improve your learning and your coaching, but it's not a self-help book, although there are some self-help things in it. And maybe I need to see where to draw the line. I don't want it to turn into a self-help book, but what I just said, learning when you're wrong, is a powerful thing. And I believe I probably have a chapter. Like, what is it? See, like this. This is actually what I have right here. This is feel good about learning you were wrong, especially when you thought you were right. See, this is a weird thing about human being. If you're struggling and doing something and you think you're doing it the right way, or maybe you think you're doing it the right way, and then all of a sudden, see, when you're doing something wrong, but you think you're doing it the right way, it feels good. That's not a good situation. What's weird is when you discover you're doing it the wrong way, which is a good thing, you now feel bad. See, our emotions are just reversed. But you know what I haven't done is like, I don't give a way out of this. There is a way out of it. The problem is it's not just being aware of it. Okay, well, this turned into a great session for it starting slow. I really like this, and we got some really great ideas. Let's see, since my chat, I think I did get, what was this? Yeah, yeah, those are good things too. Okay. Let's see, I started the recording late, but I think here I can save the chat. I'll just save the chat. Okay. Well, next week, I'm not sure I'm going to be doing a book, or I'll just tell you what might happen next week at 8 in the morning. We're in the process of framing this. I'm talking to David Bernstein, who in my mind is one of the top heavy hitters of how do you do agentic programming, design patterns, and all that. Talking to Wolfram Mueller, who in my mind is one of the really brilliant theory of constraints thought leaders, who's also open-minded. Sometimes I found that TOC people get a little narrow in what they're looking at. I mean, he is kind of looks at certain things that I'm broader in that regards, but he says that's fine. We can be different. And then let's see, there's David, there's Wolfram. I can't believe now I can't remember who the fourth guy is. Hang on. My coffee is worn off. All sorts of caffeine is worn off. I'm going to be embarrassed when I find out who it is. Okay, let me just rethink. Who would I want on this panel? David, Wolfram. Oh, Woody Zuhl. Yeah, duh. Just that.
Oh,
How can it get better than those four, right?
oh, that'd be really good. Yes, that's a
Yeah,
great
and what we're
combination.
planning to do is either every other week or every 4 weeks have a panel on using AI and what we work on, and not try to come up to a consensus. Actually, have it be, well, we're our own people. We're not trying to agree. We're trying to learn. So hopefully we'll get that started next Wednesday and then go on from there. It might be 3 weeks from now. We're going to do Wednesday mornings because that Wolfram can't make it if it's in the afternoon. And that lets Europe come in. So anyway, hopefully we'll get all that done. Okay. Anything to go? Are we all good? Thanks for being here. This was a great experience for me, and I got a lot of good ideas here. Take care.
Yeah, you're welcome. This was fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks. Bye.
You bet. Okay. Stop the recording. And now I'll end.